Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about a simple, inexpensive, and potentially life-saving addition for anybody's fish room. I never took electrical safety that seriously around my aquariums. I always assumed the manufacturers that were making the heaters and the filters and these other electrical devices that go in our submerged aquariums were doing so in a way that would make them completely safe and harmless with fail-safes backed in and so on and so forth. And I just never took it that seriously. And not too long ago, I got a little bit of a surprise. In fact, you might even say I got a little bit of a shock. I reached in to remove a power head that was no longer working, and when I grabbed the power head to unstick it from the side of the tank, I felt a very distinctive tingling in my hand and lower portion of my arm. I was definitely having some electrical interaction with my body. Now, in the circumstances, I was not grounded, so I did not provide a path to ground, and that electricity did not flow through me. It simply made my hand tingle as it made its way down through its normal current, or circuit rather. But it was enough of experience to make me realize, had I been standing there in bare feet, or if the carpet had been wet or something like that, I may very well have experienced a very bad, possibly even a fatal shock. And so what I've done is I bought a GFI, or I bought two GFI receptacles, in fact. They are GFCI is technically the way they are listed, but I always just call them GFIs. Most people simply call them GFI. It is a ground fault circuit interrupter, which is where GFCI comes from. Most people just refer to it as a ground fault interrupter. And what that does is exactly what it says. It interrupts the circuit if there's a ground fault. And I'll explain that in a minute, but I want to first clarify that what a lot of people seem to think is offering them some protection around their aquariums is not. A lot of people will use plug strips that have the little fuse or the little circuit breaker built into it, and they will feel that that offers them some sort of line of protection because you've got this fuse built into you got this breaker built into your plug strip. That's not how a breaker works. That's not how a fuse works. The only way those are going to trip is if you're pulling too much juice through the line. If you hook up too many heaters, if you hook up too many filters, and you're asking too much electricity to come through the line, that will cause that breaker to trip. If you reach into your tank and you get an electric shock from your aquarium heater, and let's say, for example, you've got your hand wrapped around it and now your hand is locked in that position and you can't let go of it, and you're just standing there being shocked, that breaker is not going to trip because, as far as it's concerned, a normal amount of electricity is simply flowing through the line. That normal amount of electricity is enough to kill you. But as far as that breaker is concerned, nothing is wrong. It's just electricity flowing through the line. It has to be a lot of electricity flowing through the line in order to finally cause that breaker to trip. So that's for systems that are overloaded. That's for systems where you've put too many filters and too many heaters. That gives you protection from that. You're not going to burn your house down because the wires in your wall got too hot. That's what a breaker does. What a surge protector does is similar, but that's for sort of a one-shot deal. If your house gets hit by lightning or something goes seriously wrong in your electric panel and a surge of electricity comes down the line, if you have sensitive electronic equipment plugged into that line, that surge of electricity will fry the circuits and so on and so forth. And so what a surge protector does is basically offer that little bit of a buffer. As that surge of electricity comes in, it detects that and it basically trips the breaker and shuts that off, so that surge of electricity will not continue down the line into your electronic equipment or whatever. Again, this has nothing to do with if you stick your hand in there and grab the heater and you're getting electrocuted. A surge protector does not come into play at all in that. What does come into play is a ground fault circuit interrupter. And what that actually looks like once you take it out of the box is just one of these jobs. You plug it into the wall. It's got one plug in the back. It's got a pin for stability. I kind of wish it had the screw that goes all the way through so you could actually screw it into the plate and like mount it there, but it doesn't. But it does plug in, and then that offers you a GFCI where you once had none. Now what a GFCI does is it monitors the current that is flowing through this receptacle. I'm sure some electrical engineers out there will take umbrage with what I'm about to say, but in a very rough and ready, easy to understand way to explain the way one of these works, which will be a good enough explanation for our understanding, is that the electricity flows down the hot line and comes back on the neutral line. It creates this loop of a circuit, and that receptacle is monitoring the amount of electricity that's going out, and it's monitoring the amount of electricity coming back, and it should be the same amount. So if somewhere down the line I've now touched something and some of that electricity is found a ground, there's a ground fault, there's a way for that electricity to leave the closed circuit and find a way, there's a fault in the system and it can now find a way to ground. That's what a ground fault is. So I've now provided that ground fault and some of that electricity is flowing through me. That receptacle detects the fact that less electricity is coming back. Some of it's now going through me, so less of it is going to be going back through that line. And that circuit will trip immediately. So it won't prevent me from getting a shock, but it will prevent a sustained electrical current running through my body. And when I say shock, it will be instantaneous. The moment you create that ground fault, and it doesn't have to be through you. If there's any type of ground fault, if the wire touches another wire and causes a ground fault, those sparks or whatever can cause fires or cause issues or whatever. If there's any kind of ground fault in your system that causes a disruption in the amount of electricity that's flowing through that current, that thing will trip instantly and shut the power off to that circuit, and it'll shut off anything down the line from that. So what I'm going to do is I have a couple of plug strips. I have two circuits, one that runs down either wall of my fish room, and most of everything is plugged into one or two receptacles that then have plug strips plugged into them. And so I have a whole bunch of series of stuff plugged into literally one or two receptacles. So what I'm going to do is put a GFI receptacle in each one of those, and then I will plug all those plug strips into that. So everything in my fish room, the lights, the pumps, the heaters, the filters, the power heads, everything in here, air pumps, everything will be plugged into one of these ground fault interrupters. And that way, if I'm ever holding on to a piece of electric equipment, I stick my hand in a fish tank, or I'm touching concrete or whatever, I will just be safe. These cost about $20, and again, it's one of those things like a fire extinguisher. It's a $20 investment that may save your life, but you hope you'll never ever have to use it. I would love for my fire extinguisher to just rot away hanging on my wall and getting dusty and never need to use it, and I would love to plug this in and forget it's there and just never have to worry about it again because I don't ever have the issue. But if a fire does break out, I've got my fire extinguisher, and if I do have a ground fault and I stick my hand in a tank, I will be protected. So this $20 is a really, it's a small price to pay for that peace of mind knowing that you'll be protected against any kind of ground fault you might have in your line. And again, with all of our wet environments down here or whatever, that's probably a pretty good idea. By code, you're required to have ground fault receptacles near any source of water in your house, in your bathroom, near your tub, or your sink in your kitchen, if you've got a utility sink in your basement or a shower in your basement, anywhere where there's a source of water within, I think, 5 or 8 feet of it, any receptacle has to be a ground fault interrupter receptacle in order to meet electrical code. Again, it will save your life one day if you ever do experience a ground fault. So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts about that are. Remember that those little plug strips with the breakers on them are not going to protect you, and a surge protector is also not going to protect you. It is not the same as one of these ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles. So there's my 2 cents on that. Again, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Don't forget, I do a live stream every Friday night and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a good chance for you to get your questions in, comments, ask my opinion about anything, or if you want any sort of deeper breakdown of any kind of questions rather than what you get from the comment section. Friday night would be your best bet to tune in. We do an open discussion. I chat about whatever. Sunday night we do a topic discussion, and I don't know what this week's topic's going to be, so make sure you tune in and find out. Subscribe, hit that like button, all the YouTube routine. So thanks for watching this one. I'll see you real soon in the next one.